everyone, and thank you so much for being with us here today. It is my great honor to welcome you to the regional event entitled Self-Regulation for Our Media. I'm Maida Muminovic, I'm Executive Director of Media Center Sarajevo, and my welcome words are on behalf of our partners, Albanian Media Institute, BNet from Turkey, Kosovo Press Council, Macedonian Institute for Media, Montenegrin Media Institute, Novi Sad School of Journalism, the Peace Institute, and CNPM Network. So a large partnership. Jointly, we are implementing a project called Our Media. It is a 3-year initiative supported by the EU, committed to strengthening the capacities of civil society organizations, media professionals, young activists, and citizens to improve their understanding of trends and challenges regarding media freedom and media integrity. Today's event comes after months-long work on learning about the state of self-regulation in the Western Balkans and Turkey. We looked into current state of self-regulation, challenges to it, into good practices of self-regulation across the said region, into needs to be met. Today, we will share and discuss our findings with you, look into how existing ethical codes and self-regulatory bodies contribute to standards of journalism, media independence, and trust. So today's agenda is comprised of 3 segments. We are starting with introductory address by Mr. Aidan White, founder and honorary president of Ethical Journalism Network. This session will be followed by the presentation of national research findings on media self-regulatory mechanisms, and it is going to be hosted by Ognan Janeski, a journalist and editor from North Macedonia. The last session of today is a session devoted to self-regulation in practice, where we will learn more about different examples of self-regulation that we found to be good and possibly inspiring examples for all of you. This session will be moderated by Tahir Žustra, a journalist from Bosnia and Herzegovina. So depending from what line of work you come from, we hope that you will leave today's event inspired by good practices in the field of media self-regulation, encouraged to use self-regulatory mechanisms more, or develop them within your own newsrooms. And our network is at disposal to you to help in any of these steps. During the event, we will share links to the research we did and hoping that these will be useful to your work. So I think that the greatest challenge of today will be to keep within the very tight time frame that we planned for this event. So I think it's better if we started as soon as possible. So without further ado, let us welcome Mr. Aidan White, founder and honorary president of Ethical Journalism Network. Good morning, Mr. White. Welcome and thank you for being with us today.
Good morning. Good morning.
We ask you to join us today and to share some inspiring thoughts about self-regulations and about media self-regulation and possibly share some good example with us. So please share with us what you have prepared. Mr. White. Okay, we seem to be having a bit of technical issue. With Mr. White's connection, which was working properly just a few seconds ago when we did rehearsal session. Let us just give it a moment.
Maybe in the meantime, Maida, we can, sorry for interrupting, we can just remind our viewers and followers of where they can find these findings and research so they can read them by themselves on their mother's tongues.
Yes, thank you, Ognan. That's useful. So each of the partner organizations that I mentioned has published the national research on their respective website. We have also prepared a regional overview, which comprises the most important findings and recommendations from across all countries that we observed. And there's also a very useful overview of good practices in media self-regulation. The last 2 documents are only available on CNPM website. So during the event, we will share through the chat option the links, direct links to English versions, and these will also lead you to national languages versions for all countries. So this research was done through the last year, and it was done by a team of researchers from each of these countries and provided very useful insights, which I hope today we will discuss. So I would also like to emphasize, while we are waiting for Mr. White to join us, that one of the reasons that we embarked on this journey is to give our contribution to understanding the importance of self-regulation in media, because the networks of self-regulators are doing an amazing job in communicating the work they do. And this is from our side, from the organizations that work very deeply in the area of...
Good morning. Hello, it's me again.
Hello. Welcome back, Mr. White. Good to see you
I'm
again.
very sorry about this, but can I start again? Are you there?
Yes, we are all here, so you may start again.
Look, I'm very, very sorry about that, but it's inevitable that technology is going to sort of fail me on in this effort to try to join you from far away. Look, I just wanted to start by saying thanks very much for the opportunity to speak. The meeting you're organizing today is fantastically important, as I said. We are in media in the midst of an existential crisis, both for information and democracy, not just within the region, but actually within the industry and right across the globe. Of course, the first thing I wanted to say is we've been here before, but today the crisis we face is very different from that crisis that there was faced 30 years ago. We're lucky today because those of you in this room and in your various places joining us are part of the formal structures that now exist today to try to help journalists and to support self-regulation. We have free unions of journalists, employers associations, press councils and media support groups, all of which are fantastically important. But despite having this vast array of champions of self-regulation, all in place right across the region, the recognition and respect for democratic values in media and within society is perhaps worse than it has been for decades. You've got before you today a really quite important and extensive report, and it gives you an excellent summary of the state of play. And there's much to admire about the changes that and progress that's been made over the years. But it also reveals that we can't fool ourselves into believing that our journalism is fit for purpose and that the systems we have to help self-regulation in journalism is also fit for purpose. One of the big problems we face is the future itself. In recent years, we've seen a fundamental and epic change in the way that the news business is organized, and there's more change on the way. The spectre of interference in the news from corporate and political centers of power is as threatening as ever and remains one of our greatest and most important challenges. But I think one of the things I've been asked to do is to say, you know, how can we learn from the past? And where has self-regulation been tried, failed, or where has it succeeded? And I think it's really important to start discussions with a real understanding of the great background that there is in this idea that media should be encouraged and regulated in a way to try to make it as professional and as quality as possible. If we're learning from the past, I think we can go back to the 1930s. In 1932, the International Federation of Journalists, a very young organization at that time, established an International Court of Honor in The Hague. This was set up to identify and condemn media actions which were warmongering or were propaganda. And at that time, world history was on the cusp of dramatic change. The rise of fascist states was creating enormous problems for journalism. And the idea of having an international tribunal supported in The Hague through the international courts to monitor journalism was extraordinary, but it was actually very much supported by many journalists at the time. In my own organization, National Union of Journalists in Great Britain and Ireland, the union at that time held a ballot of its members, and they agreed to change the union's constitution in order to expel any member who was found guilty at the International Court and the International Tribunal. So right from that period, more than, as I say, 90 years ago, there was an understanding that self-regulation required discipline and capacity of journalists to admit their mistakes. So we have to admit that today there is the same mix of propaganda, populism, tides of malicious lies, but today we have it online as well as in the analog world. And work in journalism has changed dramatically. It's been decimated by broken business models. And of course, there's a new wave of artificial intelligence, which is bringing new wrecking balls into the newsroom. So journalists face enormous challenges. Perhaps the greatest challenge that journalists face today now is the problem of a lack of trust from the public in general. According to the Reuters Institute for Journalism, people are turning away from the news. They read less, they watch less, and they feel less inclined to trust journalists and those who work in the media. I think that that's an enormous challenge for us all to face about winning back public trust. But self-regulators and media supporters like yourselves have to be optimistic. It's written into the contracts that we have. We may have to hold media to account, but we are all solid in our commitment to the idea of media and journalism with a public purpose. And it's needed more than ever. So, but the foundational structures for a movement to help us push back against this grim political, commercial, technological tide of difficulties is already set up. And in your report, which you'll discuss today, you know, we have to imagine and realize effective ways of mobilizing action to strengthen journalism and to reinforce public confidence. When media have been challenged, and they have been challenged terribly in recent years, it's about 15 years ago since we had the crisis of, if you will remember, the Muhammad cartoons and the terrible religious conflicts that were arising as a result of lack of tolerance, political instability, and so on, in which media were drawn into it. So I think one of the things that we should look at is how was that crisis dealt with? In fact, the response to within the media circles to the crisis of free expression during the publication of controversial cartoons, which led to demonstrations and direct confrontation in many cities around the world, was a coming together of media from what you might call both sides of this area to try to create a self-regulatory, reflective framework in which there could be discussion and debate how to deal with these issues. This led to something called the Global Intermedia Dialogue, which took place from 2008 to 2012. It led to an annual conference between journalists and media coming from mainly Muslim countries, and journalists and media coming from mainly non-Muslim countries. It was this Bali Democracy Forum was held every year, and it was sponsored by countries and journalists and media in the leadership in those countries that were looking for ways of debating, ways of finding self-regulatory mechanisms to deal with these problems. And that was the Global Intermedia Dialogue, supported by Norway and by Indonesia. So we do have the capacity to make change, to intervene, to recognize the challenges we've got. What we need to have are the ideas about how we do it. But it's not going to be easy. The quality of journalism today is fraying at the edges, even on the biggest stories. I mean, the media conflict in the media coverage of the Gaza conflict, for example. We've all seen it. We've all seen the horrifying ways in which that conflict is playing out. It's been an enormous challenge to journalism. And you can see the need for journalists to maintain their center of professional gravity in covering this important conflict. You'll all recall the negligent coverage of the Gaza hospital explosion in the first days of the war last October, when Hamas blamed an Israeli airstrike for an attack on the Al-Ahli hospital, which killed hundreds of people. Almost every major international media outlet immediately responded by covering this Hamas angle, reporting with language and a lack of objectivity, was supported by so-called media experts that suggested Israel was directly to blame. In fact, later analysis would show that this may have been caused by a rocket misfired by Palestinian militants. So media got it comprehensively wrong. It was a very low point for media coverage. And while some players like the New York Times and the BBC were able to reflect and to inform their viewers and their readers that they'd made a mistake, and after intense scrutiny, they were able to explain better what had happened, most of the major media preferred to sweep the thing under the carpet. They declined to explain to their audiences how they initially got such an important story so wrong at the beginning. I mean, even organizations like CNN, the Associated Press, Reuters, Al Jazeera, and the Wall Street Journal, they kept quiet, or they said later they had updated information later. This abject failure to verify unsubstantiated claim was a massive failure in systems of self-regulation inside journalism. As we know, self-regulation takes place at the level of the individual, the level of the media outlet, and the level of the industry. But here was an example where the systems failed completely. So media are notoriously hopeless about owning up to mistakes, but saying sorry when we get it wrong is a professional duty, and a failure of media in crisis situations should never lead to an embarrassed silence. So we see there how the need for self-regulation at all levels within journalism is absolutely necessary. Fact of the matter is, owning up and can make a difference. And there's really one good example which I turn to of how self-regulation, intervention by media, and responsible action can actually lead to lasting change. And this incident came many years ago, again in 2006. And it followed an incident in Italy. There was a media frenzy, a media lynching indeed, of a Tunisian. His name was Azouz Marzouk. He was a Tunisian migrant living in Erba, a town in northern Italy. He left his town and his family to go back to Tunisia to see his extended family. While he was absent, a terrible event happened at his home. His house was attacked. His wife and 3 children were brutally murdered. In his absence, Marzouk was pilloried by the media and widely depicted as a monster, with press and television interviews featured aggressive criticism of him and of the Tunisian immigrant community. In fact, later, 2 neighbors were found guilty and prosecuted of this brutal murder. This shocking media racism and targeting of this innocent father led to strong protests from the United Nations, which the refugee agency wrote to every single media organization in Italy, voicing their protest. But it also sparked something phenomenally interesting. It was the first time it had happened on this scale in Europe. An unprecedented debate within the Italian media community, bringing together journalists, editors, media owners, and the self-regulatory body, the Ordine dei Giornalisti in Italy. It led to the establishment of a groundbreaking code, the Carta di Roma, which set out standards on reporting of asylum and immigration issues, and how media should treat and cover the affairs of migrants and other vulnerable groups. It also led to the creation of a dedicated organization called Carta de Roma, which today continues to report and monitor on media standards in this area with the support of the media community. This did have an impact, with media coverage improving in Italy over these issues, even during the testing times of the 2015 refugee crisis. Up to today, of course, problems remain. There is always going to be an element of racism and bias and discrimination and stereotyping in media. But this is an excellent example of how media cooperation can strengthen media work and how self-regulation is absolutely essential to that process. The fact of the matter is, when war breaks out, as has been demonstrated in Gaza, you're going to get enormous problems which are of a different caliber. In Gaza, for example, it's very easy to talk about standards and so on, but for journalists on the spot, you've had the highest number of killings of journalists in a single conflict in recorded history, and this creates a very specific challenge in terms of sort of trying to ensure that the media coverage is high quality. But it's in reporting stories like this, and in Ukraine, for example, where cooperation among media organizations and regulators can play a positive role. It played a positive role in the Balkans in the 1990s when the Independent Media Center was set up in Ljubljana to try to bring together journalists and media during the Balkan Wars to discuss journalism, quality journalism, how to counter propaganda, and how to build respect for professionalism and for self-regulation. But today, you have to say that, that need for cooperation is absolutely fundamental. In Britain, for example, this week, today, there are regular, almost daily meetings of senior executives taking place from different broadcast media, sharing information about developing stories, and most of all, sharing information on how to protect their staff in the work that they're doing in Gaza, in the work that they're doing in the Ukraine. This form of cooperation is absolutely essential. In Ukraine itself, the Media and Ethics Commission is responding daily to the challenges faced by journalists and media denied access to the conflict areas, or promoting discussion on how to meet the ethical challenges of reporting in an environment where deceptive appeals to patriotism, of course, and propaganda challenge the journalist's duty to expose corruption or incompetence in military and governments. And the reality of it is that this work, behind the scenes work, supporting journalism, supporting media, helping them to reflect, even in the worst moments of war, that there's a need to be professional, is absolutely essential. Wherever big stories break, and the pandemic is another good example, journalists and editors do need to work together, and they do need to work together effectively. During the pandemic, for instance, it's really important to recognize that on the whole, the media performance during the pandemic in most countries was of very high quality. It's very rarely that this happens, but the head of the World Health Organization in the United Nations congratulated media around the world for the contribution that good and quality reporting had made in terms of dealing with the pandemic and ensuring that people are properly informed. The fact of the matter is, though, that press complaints bodies face enormous difficulties. But there have been spectacular failures where media and we lose heart about what is going on. It's very often easy to say, oh, we've got self-regulation, but then we see in our daily experience the dispiriting examples of how media don't take their responsibility seriously. But underneath the radar, it's very important to look at this. Complaints bodies and media monitors have by and large been successful in reaching agreements. In many parts of the world, they have been absolutely in the forefront of ensuring media respect the rights to privacy of children and vulnerable groups. They ensure that hospitals are not violated, that racism and stereotyping is diminished. In Britain, for example, they even negotiated a peace treaty with the British royal family to protect young royals from undue and unnecessary media scrutiny. And that's quite some achievement when you think about the unruly nature of the British media landscape. So when we're looking about this importance of self-regulation, it's about praising and promoting the work that's already being done. And that is tapping into a journalist's understanding of their need to be professional, of their need to respect core values. We need to do more. That's clear. We need to have more media literacy work, for example, to help the public better understand the role of media. We also need to make sure that press and media regulators are able to support media that are strengthening their public profile by using new mechanisms that take account of the new landscape in which media are in, like, for example, the Journalism Trust Initiative, which helps media to demonstrate to the public their commitment to quality journalism. Above all, journalists and media and self-regulators have to be more transparent in their work. They have to engage with the public. Self-regulators have to convince two bodies of people. They have to convince journalists and media organizations themselves that this is the right thing to do, but they also have to convince the public that the work they do is valuable for democracy, is valuable for the people's right to know. So it's very important that I think one of the most important things we must consider today is whether or not media can engage in ways to enhance their social role in democracy. Media supports self-regulators to reinforce the importance of public journalism or civic journalism. The idea is that journalists need to work together more closely within their communities, taking responsibility for more than their reporting, but also as players within the communities that are deeply embedded. Journalism is deeply embedded in the community, and it must reinforce that work. So, for example, local media may promote campaigns and efforts for environmental improvement, or higher standards in schools and hospitals, or more transparency in politics. And not just by conventional reporting, but also through targeted and constructive interventions. So we need a new form of public journalism that seeks to widen the news agenda and improve personal standards among journalists. Of course, there are powerful arguments against this. A lot of people say this sort of notion, whether it's constructive journalism or positive community engaged journalism, is extremely important. And people will say, well, that's not the role of journalists. Doing this sort of engagement with the community distorts the role of journalists as independent watchdogs against the abuse of power, and particularly government power, and has journalists as, developers and shapers of policy. And that goes against the purpose of acting without fear or favor. But for me, yes.
Sorry. Let's say in summarizing this, what would your suggestions, let's say, or advices that you can give for this, especially for this webinar for professionals working in the area?
Well, I think the real sort of point I'm making here is that we need to focus on rebuilding public trust. And I think that the way we need to do that is that we need to engage with more civic organizations. We need to encourage journalism, which is actually going to be more publicly responsible. Public interest journalism or civic journalism is going to be extremely important. My view about it is that despite what everyone says, people do need access and want access to reliable information. What they don't want is sensationalized, click-based journalism, which is not going to improve their lives. What they do look for is journalism that they can trust. So it's a question of using transparent mechanisms for self-regulation. We engage with media to encourage them to become more open about what they're doing. Of course, the biggest question is who's going to pay for it? How do we make media viable in an age when sustainability is the biggest challenge? So I think there are a number of things. We need more media literacy campaigns. We need more engagement with media addressing sort of public needs. We need more investment in community-based journalism, and we need more action politically to prevent interference directly from corporate and political centers of power. It's very easy to say these things, but these are the elements of campaigns that we need to have. And we need to look at the very good examples of the past, whether it's the Carta di Roma, whether it was the response to the Mohammed cartoons crisis, whether it's the way that media are dealing with war reporting at a time of heightened political and military tension. All of these are very important. Media can work together. And I think self-regulatory bodies have to be the pivot that actually encourages media to work together more effectively. And I think the more we can move in that direction, engaging with media, engaging with the public, then the more successful we're likely to be.
Thank you very much, Aidan. Sorry for cutting you short, but because of
that's perfectly all right. And I'm sorry for the technical hitches.
Yeah, but I'm sure that you will stay with us during the event. So if not,
if there are any questions now, I'm quite happy to try to answer them.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just check if there are any. If not, whenever they come, we will do the Q&A part probably after. But thank you very much for taking the time to be with us.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes. So we're continuing now. My name is Ognan Janeski, as Maida already announced me. I'm a journalist and editor from North Macedonia. And it is an immense privilege to moderate today's discussion, which is focusing on the crucial findings of national research on media self-regulatory mechanisms in the Western Balkans and Turkey. In today's segment, we are delving into the heart of media, self-regulation, understanding its current state, its immense importance, and the ways we can foster stronger self-regulatory practices in our region. So we have the honor of hosting esteemed speakers in this session: Brankica Petković, the editor and regional lead researcher at the Peace Institute of Slovenia; Anita Sokol, a dedicated media researcher from Media Center Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina; and Vesna Nikodinovska, a media researcher at the Macedonian Institute for Media from North Macedonia. Together, we'll explore why this research is pivotal in today's media landscape. Our distinguished panelists will shed light on the key findings and recommendations emerging from their comprehensive study. This is an opportunity to gain insights into the current challenges and, of course, best practices in media self-regulation to understand the role of ethical codes and self-regulatory bodies in upholding journalism standards, but also to discuss the future of media independence and trust in our region. So I would like to start and engage because I don't know how the organizers thought that 30 minutes will be enough for every session with all the journalists and researchers around here, but we'll discuss that later. Okay, Brankica, can you hear me?
Do you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now. So thank you for joining us. My idea about this particular session was to be more conversational, if you all allowed it. So because you had the leading role, and there also can be found a summary and everything, but let's hear it directly from you about the moments of the key findings.
I think that it is, thank you, Ognan. Good morning, everybody. I send you best regards and welcome from Ljubljana. I did lead this research in our large family of media institutes and media researchers in our region. 7 countries were covered by this research. My colleagues Anita and Vesna will highlight the main findings. What I would like to maybe at the beginning say, Ognan, if you allow, is what motivated us to do this. And then Vesna and Anita will highlight findings. I think it is also better to spare time because I know that they prepared that part, if you agree.
Yes, of course, of course.
Now I am stealing, from you as a journalist, the floor and ask myself a question. Is it okay?
I have several questions for you. So the elaboration of the challenges of balancing ethics and freedoms in media self-regulations, the motivations that you have, the mechanisms within the EU framework and the influence to us. So I have several questions. Just start with whichever you want.
Yes, I wanted to say that it is important for all of us to know that our network has been dealing with and addressing problems of media integrity in this region for a long period. And in the last period, we particularly addressed issues of hate and propaganda models of media and communication in our region, and what is the resilience of our media and journalists towards such issues, and it comes, and also very much in focus of us is media literacy. So this self-regulation, it is important from the side of media to demonstrate their capacities to set own standards, despite all enemies, all obstacles around political pressure, capture, economic problems, global players. It is opportunity to demonstrate our willingness and capacities to set standards and defend them and respect them. So we count also in our network on media literacy, on citizens, because this is also the very important part. And self-regulation here matters because we are now in a period of complex challenges for our democracies and media, and participation of citizens, capacities, readiness, willingness of them to demonstrate in self-regulation through complaints that they care, that they trust, that it is possible to do professional ethical journalism, that they expect it, that they need it. It is also crucial. These are all motivations for us in this network, despite we know the family and network of self-regulators themselves, they collaborate in the region. But we wanted as researchers to study their capacities, what is there in ethical codes, how many are there of them, do they follow the challenges in digital environment, what kind of self-regulatory bodies do we have, what are their capacities, what are their budgets, are they sustainable, and so on. Because as you said, Ognan, there is much of expectations in the new European Union regulatory framework, which is occurring surprisingly from Brussels, media regulation, first ever in the history, but very much relying on self-regulation. And this regulation...
This is yes, sorry for interrupting,
yes.
But this is what I wanted to ask you, like in the context of the increasing difficulty in regulating on online media, especially because this is a finding that people will read, that online media is the main challenge. But what role do you see, for example, for self-regulatory bodies and mechanisms within the EU framework, which is very important for us, for example?
Yes, because it is very difficult, and there are many challenges in regulating as a state regulation online media. There are also fears from the media, particularly very many, free investigative journalism are conducted through online media in our region, independent from big players that are controlled by the corrupt politicians or businessmen, as we know. So how to provide that this will not be misused? State regulation in the hands of sometimes captured regulators to punish free online media. So there is also on the side of the European Union expectation and trust that much of this can be self-regulated, so that online media can join the self-regulatory body, register there, and promise and abide rules that are set there, including for dealing with the users' comments, anonymity problems, and all of those. Unfortunately, as we all know, we have a huge number of online so-called media in our region, which are completely different of those expectations and not willing to join these efforts. So there are huge challenges on the side of the media, but also the state still to bring these media to ethical standards.
Brankica, before we pass on the microphone, the imaginary one, to Anida, I have one question, which I think that which I would really love to discuss it with you. Is ethics before freedom, or freedom before ethics?
Yeah, that is very important question. Thank you, Ognan. We faced it during our research, and I ask you all and kindly ask to read these reports. Particularly, a report on this issue is relevant for Turkey circumstances, where we had a debate with the researcher Sinem Aydinli. I hope she's there with us. About this issue, because it's particularly in Turkey very challenging to deal with all these complicated systems of self-regulation while fighting for survival in such a difficult environment. I think we cannot say it's not possible to follow ethical standards until the media are free. I think it goes together. You fight for your freedom, but you still demonstrate from day to day your readiness and your capacities to do your journalism and your media on most highest ethical level. I think it can be done simultaneously. And I respect very much colleagues in all around our region who are doing it already.
Brankica, thank you very much for now. I would like to give the floor to Anida for a little bit and probably take the time in the frame, but I do have some questions for you as well. And when we are talking about questions, for everyone following us during this webinar, please know that there is a Q&A box where you can place your questions whenever you want during the webinar, and we will address them when we will have the slot for that. But for now, let's move to Anida Sokol. Anida, can you hear me?
Yes, sure. Hello.
Hi. So looking at the main discoveries from one country to another, there are many issues that can be raised, and I think that if we delve into every country, particularly to speak about the countries for all of them 7, we will need only one webinar just for that. So can we just squeeze something in 2 minutes? Did you manage to do that?
Oh, that's maybe more than 2 minutes, but I will try to be brief. Maybe I can summarize it quickly,
and then if you have
and then if you have any questions. Yes. Okay. Okay, I will try to summarize it. This isn't an easy task, because even though there are many similarities, there are still some differences regarding the countries. So we looked at the countries in the Western Balkan region and also in Turkey. First of all, our main finding is that there are, in all the observed countries, there are self-regulatory mechanisms, a number of them, and then I will tell you which types of self-regulatory mechanisms we looked at. And also there are relatively good self-regulatory acts. Some of them also have been updated, and they follow the recent trends in online media particularly. However, all of them, their effectiveness is still limited. When I say limited, we cannot separate the effectiveness of self-regulatory mechanisms from the overall political and socio-economic context in the country. So it's very important when speaking about the effect of self-regulation to also always have in mind what is the current state of play in those countries, so where media operate. So our main conclusion is that self-regulation can improve the quality of media content and the work of the media in countries where there is really already a high and stable level of media freedom and in general public accountability. However, there are some good examples and even some media that, despite everything that is happening in their countries and despite of political pressure and citizens that are looking for sensational news, etc., they're really working on their own self-regulatory codes, really trying to implement and follow all the self-regulatory principles. So what we looked at, what kind of self-regulatory mechanisms we observed. So we looked at the self-regulatory mechanisms at the level of journalist associations. So, for example, the codes of journalist codes in a number of countries. Then we looked at the general self-regulatory bodies, mainly the press councils. We also look at what types of self-regulatory mechanisms exist within public service media. And also then we observed some cases at the level of private or civil society media, although my main observation was that there is a lack of discussions within media outlets about ethical standards. However, still there are some examples of media that, again, have even their own codes of ethics and try to abide and adhere to all the professional standards. So regarding the first type of self-regulation, so that is at the level of journalist associations. So these codes of ethics in most countries are really important references for professional conduct of journalists. However, as the author of the regional overview, Nedim Sejdinovic, concluded, this type of self-regulation is slowly dying in the Western Balkan countries, and some of his reasons that he mentions is that, for example, in some countries, not in all, not all journalists are members of professional associations, and in some countries, these organizations are polarized, etc. However, so it's very important to strengthen the role of journalist associations. Some of our conclusions were that, for example, most often journalist associations are more focused on freedom of expression, defending journalists, etc., which is of utmost importance, as Brankica already mentioned. However, we also have to take back discussions about breaches of ethical standards among the members of journalist associations as well. And in some of the countries, journalist codes have not been amended either. When it comes to self-regulatory bodies, there are a number of them in all of the countries, and they have really a long tradition of work. In most cases, self-regulatory acts have been adapted, or have been updated following technological innovations. However, for example, in Montenegro, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, ethical codes of these self-regulatory bodies have been innovated. So with new provisions following the recent trends in the media. However, in other countries, there are examples where additional guidelines have been for online journalism have been adopted, such as, for example, in North Macedonia. However, our finding and our conclusion is still that these codes need to be amended because the technology is always involving, and then there is also the issue of ethical use of AI in newsroom, which so far hasn't been tackled in the countries. When it comes to
Anita,
yeah.
I have prepared a question for Vesna later on this matter, but just shortly to give some insights to our audience. When it comes to codes of ethics for public broadcasters, did you have any findings on those?
Yes, we looked at public broadcasters.
Internal, yeah.
Yes, most of them have their internal codes. However, what is interesting that in most cases, these internal codes are part of their work agreement. So most often they do not relate to media reporting, but usually relate to how, for example, journalists should act and what should they say, in public appearances, etc. And sometimes this could be also dangerous because it can be used for like censoring the media. In Bosnia and Herzegovina, I can give you an example. There is there are editorial guidelines for reporting for public service broadcaster, and for the public service broadcaster at the state level, the guidelines have been amended, also touching the issue of social networks, for example, how that, for example, a denial of war crimes and genocide is prohibited, that a glorification of war criminals is prohibited, hate speech, the editors of public service broadcasters should also look at comments and like delete comments that have hate speech, etc. So there are different mechanisms and different examples. However, what is really problematic is, so in some countries there are like committees that follow the implementation of these internal codes. However, their work is non-transparent, not effective, and also the number of citizens who file complaints is very small. So there is really a need for improvement in that regard. For example, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, there isn't an ombudsperson, for example, like in Montenegro, that reacts to citizen complaints, not even a committee that would act, like follow and react to certain breaches of ethical standards. So there is really a need to improve that, and public service broadcasters should be leaders in this sense and give us example.
I have one very important question as well on the issue. The main question is, how can this work be done without any financial aid? Because this is one of the issues, but this is all. There is also a sub question there that connects to the findings on the aspect of your researches on self-regulatory bodies. How are they financed across the different countries?
Well,
very shortly, and then we go to Vesna.
Okay. One similar and very, very important point is really there is a lack of financial sustainability of self-regulatory bodies in all of the countries. I know in Montenegro, these bodies are funded through state fund. However, in other countries, this is not the case. And we really need to find ways for a sustainable financing of self-regulatory bodies, because they most often act as civil society organizations. They need to apply for funds, and this really takes them away from their main work. So they need to implement other project activities, or they need to write project proposals, etc., and not like to focus on their main job. So this is additional burden to them, and that this limits their capacities, it limits their work, and etc. So really it's crucial to find sustainable financing models. For example, it could be done through state funds, but in the percentage that would not that would not impact their independence. So this is one of the crucial and maybe most important finding, that these organizations are so important. So journalist associations, self-regulatory bodies, committees within different public service broadcasters, etc. They should not be marginal. They should be like really main bodies for ethical principles in our countries, and their work should be really strengthened, even through financing, through capacity building, and in different manners. So maybe this is something.
Thank you very much, Anita. Yes, thank you very much for taking the time. I already have questions for Brankica and for Anita, one more, but let's hear from Vesna first. Vesna Nikodinovska, if you can hear us, please raise your voice.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you, Ognan. Good morning, everybody. I'm glad to be here today. My task today is to summarize the recommendations that resulted from the research in all 7 countries in the Western Balkans region and Turkey. It is not an easy task, since there are around 20 recommendations, but I will try to be concise. These general recommendations, as Anita mentioned, already are applicable for most of the countries in the region, although the functioning of the self-regulation in each country depends on the broader national context and has its own specificities. Following Anida's presentation, I will start from the big picture. The research points the need of stimulating political, social, economic, and media environment in order for media self-regulatory mechanisms to be functional and effective. Therefore, the civil society and the citizens, professional associations, independent institutions in the countries in the region, but also the EU through the process of integration, should continuously put pressure on the governments to improve media legislation and to ensure unselective implementation of laws and the rule of law in general. This is seen as a necessary condition for lessening the pressure on media freedom, regulatory bodies, public service media that could influence on creating environment for more efficient media self-regulation. Seen in the broader context, the countries should ensure conditions for functional media markets through media legislation, legislative definition of public advertising, and through ensuring transparency of media ownership. The actors in the field, such as regulators, self-regulators, and other relevant actors should encourage debate and offer solutions about cooperation mechanisms between regulatory and self-regulatory bodies, and consider introduction of specific forms of co-regulation in the areas where self-regulation mechanisms are not effective. Regarding the efforts of the institution, that the institutions should demonstrate in cooperation with other relevant actors, as Aidan and Brankita and Anida already mentioned, it is very important that states and state institutions systematically encourage inclusion of media information literacy in the formal and informal educational system. Media literate audiences are crucial for recognizing the importance and use of self-regulation. In all monitored countries, one of the major problems noted was ensuring sustainability and funding of self-regulatory bodies. In that purpose, the research recommends that self-regulatory bodies and the relevant stakeholders should initiate consultations about the models for long-term sustainability and financial stability of the self-regulatory bodies. The most of the self-regulatory bodies in the region are financed by donors. While, for example, we have Montenegro, these bodies are funded by the State Fund for Pluralism. State assistance is seen as it could bring risk for the independence of the self-regulatory bodies. While funding by members of self-regulatory bodies is still not functional and satisfactory. Therefore, the international funds are still necessary for temporary and mid-term institutional support. So they could strengthen the capacities, so the self-regulatory bodies could strengthen their capacities. In perspective, develop a strategy and action plans for long-term sustainability. On a long term, speaking about the sustainability of the self-regulatory bodies, the state funds should be considered as a possibility for funding in a certain percentage at least. But in that case, it is necessary to establish precise and effective mechanisms that will prevent political influence or other negative effects on the credibility of self-regulation. Having in mind the technological innovations that have dramatically changed the media landscape and the very concept of journalism and media, the self-regulatory bodies should work on continuous improvement of self-regulatory acts and mechanisms of action, especially in terms of adjusting it to the digital environment. It is very important that the self-regulatory bodies constantly work on increasing their visibility among media and journalists, civil organizations and citizens, even among the institutions. The relevant actors should discuss the possibilities for the general self-regulatory bodies to extend their jurisdiction to all types of media. And I think that Aidan mentioned this, the closer cooperation among self-regulatory bodies in the region is also encouraged. and needed as well, since ethical problems in media are similar in the countries in the region and very often have cross-border nature.
Vesna, before you continue, I have something in mind that I wanted to ask you, because I already announced that during Anida's questions. So, for example, regarding the public service media, how is self-regulation being implemented? What improvements are necessary to ensure its effectiveness? I would like to hear your opinion on that, even though Anida started a little bit on it.
Speaking about the public service media, as Anida mentioned, all public service media in the region already have internal codes of ethics. But the researchers found that it was extremely difficult to assess the extent to which they are implemented in practice. Some of these acts have already been updated and amended in accordance with the new media platform, new digital environment, but this process should continue and follow the trends. Therefore, public service media should create modern ethical codes or update the existing ones, adapting the documents to the online digital environment. And public service media need to provide clear procedures for implementation of the codes. This is very important. Active and functional internal self-regulatory mechanisms are needed that will monitor implementation of the codes. Speaking about public service media in particular, but this goes also for all other media. They are encouraged to ensure efficient formal and technical mechanisms for easier for facilitating the two-way communication with the citizens. The possibility for establishing media ombudsperson institution as a form of self-regulation should be considered. This goes for both for state level and at the level of public service media, but also for individual media, media associations, media corporations. It is important these persons, ombudspersons, to be professionals, highly valued professionals with high public reputation and trust. Public service media should continuously promote their internal ethical codes in order to introduce the citizens with this mechanism, since some of the findings were that citizens in some of our countries are not well introduced with these mechanisms that it already exists. But in this regard, closer cooperation is needed between the public service media and the self-regulatory bodies, but also with fact-checking organizations.
When you mentioned the fact-checkers, this is what I wanted to ask Anida in the second round, because we are very much on time, and congratulations on all of you for that, and thank you. But when Vesna already mentioned that, Anida, so if we're talking about fact-checkers, can we also speak about their significance in supporting ethical journalism, because this has become very popular in the past years?
Thank you for your question. Yes, besides these like traditional self-regulatory mechanisms that we also looked at other types of, we call them like, they're not like typical self-regulatory mechanism, but they are complementary to self-regulation in all of the countries. So, and we also included fact-checking organizations in our research, and definitely they contribute, and also there are mixed responses from the media community. But for example, in my research in Bosnia and Herzegovina, they said, representatives of media organizations said that yes, and this is our also conclusion, that definitely they contribute to raising professional standards in the media, because first of all, a media organization lack fact checkers in their newsrooms, and then by pointing, so one of the interviewees in the case of Bosnia and Herzegovina said that yes, we are now more careful what we should publish, because this is very important, you know, and that they are doing a good job. So definitely, besides all of these traditional self-regulatory mechanisms. There are also additional ones, and we concluded that and also gave examples as positive practice fact-checking organizations, which are gaining more and more popularity, more followers, etc. And definitely they are part of the overall system that aims to improve media reporting in our region. I also have to mention, sorry, I will not take much time, but regulators' codes, even though they're bylaws, yes, they are their main principle is to their main aim is that media outlets, in these cases broadcasters, adhere to professional standards. So they also can be seen as guidelines for professional media reporting. So there are different also like systems and codes that we need to follow and look. And definitely there is a need to not only to improve these codes, but definitely to implement them better. And maybe if I can just conclude, really we need to talk more about self-regulation, not only within media community and in these conferences, but also journalists should use every opportunity and all the meetings to discuss about ethical standards, to discuss about different types of breaches of ethical codes, etc. We really need to go back like to really basic journalistic standards and to discuss and be open more about the main rules of our profession.
Thank you very much, Anita, for joining us. Brankica already raised her hand, even though I have to say that I imagined that Brankica will be closing this session, but let's go to Brankica.
Yes, maybe it's also opportunity, and you will say when it is the end, but I wanted to say about this call for talking more and putting self-regulation higher on the agenda. It happened in my country, in Slovenia. I was close to follow also what Vesna said. You ask about public broadcaster, and in Slovenia we introduced ombudsman, like in 2008, and it was very functional in the mandate, and it very much depends on the personality of the person when it is personal position of the personality who is the ombudsperson. And it happened in our public broadcaster that in the period of the mandate of Ilinka Todorovsky as ombudswoman, everybody in not only in public broadcaster, in the country learned what is self-regulation and what is ethics, because it was such a big effort to respond to each complaint from her side, also asking each journalist and editor to respond to each complaint several times. So it happened that there was raised 2,000 complaints only to TV news program. So it was a literacy lesson, you know, learning by doing, this dynamic of interaction between viewers, listeners, and journalists and editors needed to have dialogue. What is good? Why it was broadcast? Why that was indeed that way? And this is very important. It is. It can be how to say, supplementary to regulation, to education when it works. And I wanted to highlight that it can work and it can be high on the agenda if we make efforts in that sense and appoint very dedicated independent persons on those positions. Now, financing, Ognan. It is also very important to say, I am now part of the reform of the Press Council, Ethics Council of Journalists Association in Slovenia. They go through the learning from some Belgium and Finnish, in Finland, Press Council. And model of funding in these countries is that industry, media companies and their associations very much contribute, you know, but this is in the countries where media freedom is higher and there are no media publishers, broadcasters, owners interfering and repressing, pressing journalists. So in my country for 2 decades, journalists didn't want to have media owners in the ethical council. Yes. Not trusting them, not even, and then of course then they also don't receive money for self-regulatory body from the industry. And in the region, in our country, 7 countries, this is replaced by donor money. In Slovenia, it's not the case. So journalists from their membership fee finance it. And there are also now expectation from the new law in Slovenia for the state funds to contribute with all challenges. But we should not forget that it should be a responsibility in normal circumstances of the media industry to finance partly also these important bodies and mechanisms.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Brankica. And when I wanted to, first, Vesna, because I interrupted you before and went to Anita, was there anything that you wanted to add and you didn't share it with us?
No, it was great. Thank you, Brankica, for the examples. You gave color actually to the recommendations, which are pretty much strict. And I would just would like, as a final thought, maybe I would like to mention the role of media associations, the promotion of self-regulation among media and journalists themselves is really important. As the research, the comparative analysis already shows, as a consequence, the awareness about the importance of ethical reporting is maturing among a number of media and journalists. And I would like to just point to 2 recommendations, final recommendations about a role of media associations, that media and journalists associations should continuously raise awareness and knowledge of ethical challenges in the profession, especially in relation to the new technologies and the European media regulation. And another thing important is that journalist associations should restore or strengthen the role of their courts of honor, which are in charge of matters related to violations of the journalistic codes by their members. This was the, I hope, short summary. For those interested in each particular case and country, you can check the reports on the CNIPMA site or individual sites of the media organizations.
Thank you very much to the 3 of you, to Brankica, Anita, Vesna, for taking the time. I hope you will stay with us for the second session as well.
Of course.
Yes. Super.
Thank
you very much. And now we move on to my colleague, Tahir Žustra. Tahir, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ognen. Thank you for all of us. Hello from Sarajevo. We will try to fit in the time plan until 1 p.m. But if you produce a minute, please forgive us. Don't forget, first of all, to use the possibility to ask question that you can see at the bottom of the screen. First of all, we would like to thank all colleagues from first part of our online event today for all the information present, but also for all the research that will help our media in the Western Balkans and Turkey to be even better and more professional in this moment. I greet you all from Sarajevo. My name is Tahir Žustra, and I'm a journalist and reporter on commercial television from the national Nova TV channel in Bosnia and Herzegovina. In the next hour, I will be the moderator of the second part of our event and panel discussion on positive examples of the success of self-regulation of the media from the point of view of regulators and self-regulators. It's my really huge pleasure to welcome Biljana Georgievska, Director of the Council for Media Ethics of North Macedonia. Biljana, thank you for your time and everything you do in the field of media content regulation. Also, Vladimira Dorchova, editor of the Storyteller portal, which lightly regulates itself, is waiting for us in Serbia. Vladimira, greetings to you as well. Thank you for your time. And In Bosnia and Herzegovina, it's a pleasure to welcome Haris Bajic from the Peace Building Network of Bosnia and Herzegovina, a strongly affect NGO organization and very popular internet platforms or portals in our country. Haris, greetings to you. In the next hour, we will talk about the importance of contents regulation in reality, about regulation and self-regulation, the rules of different regulators, but also the right and opportunities of our citizens in every country. Biljana, I would like to start with you and the last numbers from last years. How much did the citizens of North Macedonia use the opportunities to report media content to you as a regulator?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon from Skopje. Thank you, Tahir. It's a pleasure to be part of this conversation. In total, when we talk about the figures, there were 132 complaints in 2023, out of which 53 were submitted by citizens itself. This is not a big percentage, but still, there is a positive trend in these figures from one side, in terms that more people are obviously aware of the need of professional standards for quality journalism and the possible violations of them in comparison with the previous year. But still, having in mind that there are over 200 online media, probably more, where some people working in them, I won't say that all of them are journalists, have perception that there is no need of any rules on internet. These figures are still small, obviously. The other complaints last year were submitted by non-governmental organizations, media against media, or institutions against media, lawyers, etc. Over 90% of all complaints were against online media, which means that internet sphere is still understood as a space where rules are not important by some of the media workers. So there is a lot of work in front of us to approach the citizens directly and the online media directly to promote the need of the rules and the ethics in the media content. I would like to stress out, just to add, that our most positive experience were the direct contacts with young people. I have been in these organizations for only 7 or 8 months. And during this short period, that was my most positive experience. The lectures we had or networking we had with university students or high school students, they were very curious, very honest, asking logical questions, sharing their experiences, especially with media and social networks, asking about copy-paste journalism. So we have to proceed with these literacy lessons, as Brankica said, to proceed with this dialogue with young people, and the process of education should be always in our agendas.
Yeah, but in global, from last year, how satisfied are you with all numbers of citizens reporting content?
Yes, we are satisfied because there is a positive trend in these figures. Last year, there were in total around 78, I would say, complaints. In comparison with the previous years, yes, this 2023 was better with bigger figures, with bigger number of complaints. Even though I would like to see more people ready to submit a complaint, which means that more people become familiar with the code of ethics of journalism and the meaning of all articles in it, familiar with the possible breaches of the code, etc., familiar with the process of submitting complaints. And what is good in journalism, what is responsible journalism, and what are the breaches. As Aidan said at the beginning, to be aware of the media fit for their purpose. As a result, in the near future, I would also like to see, as a result, but not probably next year or next couple of years, but in the near future, I would also like to see smaller numbers of complaints as a result of more and more professional content in the media, responsible content and journalists in media which comply to the professional rules, which will give an answer to those people who are willing to act as guardians of the good journalism.
Thank you for now, Biljana, for this information. Vladimira, your storyteller portal is a local portal that brings local news important to the your community. Write in 2 languages and have your own codex of ethics. What does it mean in practice?
Tahir, thank you for the opportunity to speak about our experiences within the topic of the media self-regulatory. Well, this means that we, as a small portal that reports in Slovak and Serbian language, we have additionally regulated our journalistic and editorial work in the newsroom. With that internal document that does not represent a replacement for the existing official document that regulate journalistic ethics in Serbia, but they're upgrading because it takes into account the specificity of our bilingual media that operates in multi-ethnic environment in Vojvodina, with a focus on human and minority rights, with all of the spectrum of the rights in the specific long form multimedia digital format. Well, in practice, this means that this internal document is like kind of guidelines for everyone who is engaged with our editorial, a guideline for journalistic topics, journalistic approaches and behavior in public space. And on the other hand, this our internal code of ethics serves as some kind of ID or DNA of our newsroom, to which journalistic integrity is very important. And it is some kind of public indicator of our editorial policy or concept. And at the end, maybe we can see it as a tool or mechanism to bring back trust in media among our community.
Yeah, which parts of the codex of journalistic work does it cover? Focus on themes, maybe approach, maybe creativity, innovation, maybe with the community, with a decision maker in your community, or etc.
We tried to define these guidelines in a creative way, as an inspiration, not another document, but as an inspiration. And that's why we defined our main topics, values and mission, and how to deal with specific situation and communication issues with representative from minority institutions or local governments in Serbia, in Vojvodina. Of course, our mission is to act in accordance with the public interest, of course, and also our mission is to inform, educate and inspire. This inspire is very important for us. And our mission is to promote human and minority rights, interculturality, gender equality, and gender-sensitive language. All these are our main journalistic topics that is mentioned in this huge definition of our mission. And these are our main topics, and we defined main journalistic approaches for dealing with these themes. Also, very important part of our code of ethics is, and our journalistic work in our newsroom, is building a quality relationship with our community. And that's why we have part of this document where we are dealing with this topic, that we strive to find new audiences. That means new young audience because we think that we must nurture our audience that will become one day our loyal community. And some of previous panelists mentioned two-way communication with citizens and community, and this two-way communication between our newsroom and community is very important, and that's why one of our big values are this kind of community engagement. And at the end, maybe I can emphasize especially the part of our document entitled Relationship and Communication Between Journalists and Editors of the Storyteller with National Councils of National Minorities and Local Governments. For the reason that we are minority media as well as local media, and we have a specific need and specific obligation to report on the work of the minority institutions in Serbia, which politicians often prevent us because they ignore us. And in this sense, this code also reminds us, our journalists and editors, of the available mechanisms how to get information of public interest and importance, because we often forget about these available mechanisms.
Every day we saw your situation with the politicians in Serbia and many issues with decision maker in your country. But I seen your codex, and I want to congratulate to you and your redaction for everything. Does the exist? One more question for this moment. Does the exist of your Vladimira internal codex of ethics facilitate the work of your journalists and associate in the what way?
I would say it facilitates the work of our journalists and other collaborators, because this code of ethics concerns also other people that are involved in our editorial. So it facilitates work of journalists, because when they read it, they fully know which area, which topics we are covering, in which way or which approaches or angle we are looking at that topics. But of course, all these angles or approaches can be changed, because we are trying to nurture in our newsroom creativity and innovation in the production, in the approaches, etc. Why? Because we think we must follow the modern trends in technological way, communication way, in regarding to be closer to our community. Of course, this doesn't mean that we are slaves to the trends, but they serve us as an inspiration for us how to tell better journalistic stories that are in line with realistic needs and lives of our community. We want, together with our community and with our journalistic work, to change the world, or part of the world, or micro world that we are living. So I would say that this internal code serves as a handbook of work of a storyteller at the end of the day.
Thank you for this moment. Haris, in the whole story, the peace network, peace building network in Bosnia and Herzegovina will serve as another good example. But first, let's briefly introduce our participants to what the network is and how many media organization includes.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Tahir, and thanks to organizers for having me today here. Well, the Network for Building Peace is an organization which exists for 14 years now. Since 2010, we were first the informal group of citizens in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and since 2018 we are registered. So we are gathering more than 250 organizations, in which we do have media organizations. Several media organizations are our members. So our main goal and our main task is to provide better life circumstances to all the citizens in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that's what we try to do on every step of our work. It would be economic or democratic rights or any other possibility. We tried and gather all the organizations to make it possible and to also reconciliate people in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that reconciliation is a big part of our work. And we also are, let's say, first responders to many happenings in our country, and not just in our country, but also in our broader region. So that's what we try and do. Also, we gather schools, so we do trainings and we do other ways of educating the people in our country, and especially children and youth, but also other organizations, how to spread this message of peace in our country.
Yeah, nice. It is not in vain to report media content. You demonstrated this in a few years ago with the case of the anti-migrant portal, exactly. Who did you complain to, why, and what happened after all?
Well, in 2019, we were aware of this portal existing, anti-migrant, which in its name, for a start, has a very hateful name towards one specific group of people. So we were ones to react also with the press council in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and we sent our appeals to press council in Bosnia and Herzegovina, 4 of them, of which 2 were accepted, and also to the institution of human rights ombudsman in Bosnia and Herzegovina at that time. So our appeals were accepted, and we were sending our appeals about texts on that portal. For example, it had hatred towards one specific group, but not also for that group of people, for immigrants, but also for other groups, ethnic groups in Bosnia and Herzegovina. So after that, our appeal was accepted, and we don't know how we didn't have the information at that time, since we couldn't get it from the officials, but the portal was shut down at that time. It is online again, but as far as I know, that whole case was forwarded to the prosecutor's office in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and the court of Bosnia and Herzegovina confirmed it. This appeal. So the process was raised against this person, the owner of portal, which it didn't have the impressum, it didn't have any information, it just had email address. So it was very hard to find out who it was for us, but also media organizations helped us, and they shared this story, and they raised the awareness about this problem. So the portal was shut down sometime in 2019 in December. It is online again, but just recently. So we will also follow it, and it's not in vain to report this kind of content.
Yeah, you often follow the work of the media, probably in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The focus is often on a gross violation. But what do you mean by that?
Well, we do have good cooperation with the media in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and We are the ones to react to every possible violation, especially of human rights in our country, but any violation of rights in our country, we are the first responders to those events. So we do follow portals like this and media outlets like this and report them to the officials, which have the duty to further escalate that case if that's the case. But also we are the ones to react when media workers and media newspaper or online media or TV journalists or whoever it may be are attacked. And unfortunately, it was very often the case in our country. And we are the first ones to react and to respond and to appeal to all the officials and to everyone who needs to be included in this process to react and to bring the ones responsible to the justice.
Yeah, thank you, Haris, for this moment. Biljana, in North Macedonia, we have interesting situation where about 130 online media have approached the Media Ethics Council in your country. But on the other side, in this moment, we have 90% of those who violate ethical standards are actually online media. What does that tell us?
Tahir, as I previously said, the wide perception of some of the people working online is that the internet space is free of rules completely. In Macedonia, there is, and like in many more countries in Europe, there are no regulations on online media. Not all of them feel that they have to say who is the owner, who are the editors, who are the people working there. As a result, there are over 90% of the complaints against online media. Obviously, the public, the readers, they are reacting. They are not happy, they are not satisfied. Some of those online media are owned or operated by business people. Some of them are owned by political figures, by people wanting to protect their own interests, but not the interests of the public. Under the umbrella of the press media .mk, of online media members of our council, they voluntarily approached the council saying that they want to comply the rules, but obviously not all of them do that. A lot of their breaches happen on social media in the comments coming under the news items of online media. And the usual answer of the media when we react regarding those comments, usually with hate speech, with discrimination, they say that they have staff shortages, they don't have people who will work overnight to clean the wrong messages on the social networks. So it is quite complicated, or it gives a picture of the real staff shortages in the media in total in Macedonia. There was an analysis a couple of days ago saying that in the regional and local media, only one person working there regularly is a journalist. So it's very obvious why the breaches happens mostly in online sphere.
Yeah, but we have also situation. No one of the 5 national television station in your country are among the members of the Media Ethics Council. What are their reasons, Biljana?
I was talking with my colleagues working in this office previously. I was told that some of this group of 5 national with TV channels were members once in the press council. But when the complaint commission made a decision against them, they immediately got out. So obviously they don't want to be judged. They feel I don't know, they feel over the others, they feel untouchable, they don't want to be criticized or talked about. We will approach them again. Times are changing, people are changing, so hopefully they will change their attitude. It is not a good message by them that they don't want to be members of the good society, I would say, which someone can say that they don't want to comply the ethics and professional rules. So we are going to approach them again. If they were members, or if we had better cooperation with them, then obviously it will help also the press council to spread the message. Because according to the official figures, they are most watched television channels, national licenses they have. So it will help us to promote the work of the press council, the aims of press council, to promote the tool that citizens have in their hands to submit complaint in very short and easy process. So definitely that's the reason why we will try to increase this kind of relationship with these TV channels.
Thank you, Biljana. Vladimira, let's go back to the Storyteller Codex of Ethics. How challenging was it to establish? What were the obstacles? How long did it take?
Honestly, it was not challenging for us to prepare this kind of document because we believe in media self-regulation. So that's why it wasn't very challenging. And because it is very important for us to have on the paper a reminder who we are, what we strive for. The creation or preparation of our document took approximately 3 months, and we were lucky that we had mentoring support from the independent media self-regulatory organization Press Council in Serbia, of which we as a Storyteller are members from the founding of the newsroom. It was the Press Council that worked with us. I will especially mention Gordana Novakovic from this self-regulatory body, who was our mentor and our great support in producing this kind of document. Otherwise, we knew from the beginning, from the start, what is our focus in this document, because we lacked that kind of determinants in the specifics that characterize our work. I, as editor, devoted most of the time for writing and defining this document and these guidelines, with occasional conversation with our journalists. Before we adopted this document, journalists were once again invited to propose some changes. What now it appears to be a need in some future period is that we need to revise the code, not in the sense of substance, but of additions such as who and in what way supervises the editorial office, whether it implements these guidelines, and we should find an answer to the question, who will monitor the implementation of our code of ethics? Maybe it's a good idea to that maybe our community, members of our community, monitors implementation of our code of ethics, or maybe somebody that that is combined from, I don't know, our journalists and members of community. I don't know, but this is what appears that is very important to do in upcoming period. And you asked about obstacles. Well, we didn't have obstacles I've taught back in 2021-22 when we wrote this code of ethics. But from this perspective, only obstacle was the form. I wrote it down, form of one-sidedness preparatory work, because I work all alone on this document. In some way, journalists were involved, but they were engaged with our editorial at that time, maybe for 5-6 months. And maybe in that time, they didn't have that feeling what should that kind of document contain. And I think that after the 2 years, they are still engaged in and work in our newsroom. I think that now is the time to revise the document, because they are here for the 2 years, and they have their point of views what we should change in this code of ethics internal document.
Do you have any reaction from your colleagues from the other Serbian media to your codex of ethics?
Well, perhaps I expected more interest from the media and from the colleagues. I expected that they would say, "Wow, Vladimira, you have a great document. Why did you wrote it?" But
something like my reaction.
But at the end of the day, we didn't receive that kind of a reaction, and we don't matter because we wrote it for us, not for them. So at the end of the day, we are satisfied that we do something for our newsroom. But I think last year, one small newsroom, they are dealing with audio podcasts in Novi Sad. They Fabrika Kreativnosti, it's called. They wrote us and asked us, can they use our internal document as inspiration for creating their own? So at the end of the day, or at the end of one period, we had some reaction from colleagues.
And shortly, Vladimira, please, your codex is available for a wider audience, for your readers, for your public. Exactly.
Yes, it is available on portal, but only a part of it, because we in that time we thought that it is internal document and some parts should be internal. But from this perspective, we think that we should publish whole document because when we publish whole document, the public or members of our community can monitor us, can say, hey, storytellers, what are you doing? This is not defined in your code of ethics. You are not going right way. So someone mentioned from previous participants that participation of the citizens are very important. And I think that yes, it is important, and that's why Storyteller will publish whole document on our portal.
Thank you, Vladimira, so much for this information. Haris, on the website of the Peace Building Network, you can find a resource base that also leads to the forms of the institution of human rights ombudsman in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and information of this type of is available to all those who follow you. Do your followers notice it, and how do they use it? Do you have any feedback?
Well, that resource base is quite new on our website. We had a redesign of the website, but our members and our followers already know most of them know for these forms and these ways of reporting this content and violations to the human rights ombudsman institution in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And they use it not only for media content, but also for violation of human rights or any other rights in our country. But this is really new, and we are a big resource base for CSOs in our country. So we are also on the first line. If they need help, we are there to provide our best knowledge and our all of our skills and knowledge to them, to help them in that process, and to if we need to write an appeal, we help them with that in our own possibilities. And we are a small team, but the people working in the Network for Building Peace are very skilled and knowledgeable. So we try our best to be the guideline, to be the ones to guide all the people in our country to use these tools and to help using these tools.
In this moment, we have one question for you from our Q&A box. Do you receive requests from citizens who ask for your help when submit the complaints? Do you maybe organize some educational programs on how to fill the complaints correctly? Please, can you,
Yes,
now.
During the open sessions of the complaint commissions, which happens a couple of times per year, we do explain whole the process. During the meetings with young people, as I mentioned, lectures for university students, for high school students, we do explain whole the process and how the tool works. There was an interesting session with high school students with help of our colleague from Austrian Press Council. He wanted to organize something like role play between the pupils, between the children, practically teenagers from a high school, and they were extremely engaged. They were very happy to join that play role, and one of them to be a complainant, the another to be a lawyer, the third one to have another role. But it happens in a different way. We received probably 10-ish complaints by one single person, and none of them had a basis for the complaint to be discussed by the complaint commission. They were wrong. Practically, the young gentleman complained about the content in the media which he personally didn't like. So we invited him in our office, wanting to help him to understand the mechanism, to have a look of the code of journalists, to find out how the complaint will be in the right way submitted. So he's better now. We are receiving not that much complaints by him, but couple of complaints which are have basis to be discussed.
And one more question for you, Biljana, from our Q&A box. Who are the most active users of your mechanism in North Macedonia?
Most active, I will have a look to the statistics for the last year, 2023, which says that the biggest percentage are citizens. 53 out of 130 complaints were by citizens. Then organizations and non-governmental organizations. We had one organization during the month of June last year, which was dedicated to the rights of the LGBT community. They were they put themselves in a role of a watchdog, and they submitted a lot of complaints regarding hate speech related to news items on the social media. And they helped really for the people to understand, or for the journalists as well to understand, that they are responsible for the comments as well, and that they are responsible to clean them if they conclude that they are a hate speech or discrimination. Then media against media. We had a lot of cases when some of our colleagues were absolutely fed up by online media copying their media products. There was a case when journalist, lady journalist, she made very interesting story for a newspaper, and it was also video online of that newspaper, and a small regional television from Štip took it completely and deleted the logo of the original author, which wasn't fair, of course. And there are a lot of cases of copy and paste of so journalists are not they don't want to tolerate anymore their colleagues who are sitting somewhere in a table and just copying and pasting, and etc.
Yeah,
I mean,
thank you, Biljana. We have just a few minutes for our final conclusions. Haris, we're gonna back to you for final comment. Why should citizens use their opportunities and rights to regulate media content? Shortly, please.
They should, of course, they should act as guardians.
It's okay, Biljana, you can answering.
Sorry,
first.
I thought that the question was.
It's okay, Biljana. You can start.
Whose turn is now? Sorry about
Biljana.
Mixed up.
All eyes on you.
Okay, then definitely, I think that citizens should submit complaints, that they should act as guardians of the professional and responsible media products, that they should in this way remind the media and journalists that their primary goal is the public interest, not business, not political, not others' interests. They have right to be informed correctly, and that mechanisms of self-regulation are of great importance for the development of the democracy in the country.
Biljana, thank you so much. Haris, the same question for you.
Yeah, well, exactly as Biljana said, but also it's a good exercise in exercising rights in our country and in every country in Western Balkans, especially. And to make sure that institutions know that the people of our country know their rights and they know what should be done, and the media should also know that citizens know their rights and how to that they follow the media and how they work. So citizens should totally use this tool and know where to start, and we are the ones often to start these processes, but also we have the press council in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and that should also be the address for all the citizens in our country to use it every day if needed. And I know that we don't need it every day, but just to be aware that these tools are existing, and that the media should work in broad public interest and not for clicks or just to be read or popular.
Thank you, Haris, so much for everything. And final touch, and our Vladimira. Vladimira, why should citizens report media content?
Well, because the media content exists because of the community, because of the people. It's not the other way around, and community should be proactive, not passive, because the public interest concerns people, although we often don't understand it that way. Because if so-called media or journalistic content that is published is harmful, immoral, illegal for various reasons, And we as citizens, if we do not react, we become accomplices of evil, and we are stopped working for the benefit of the community in which we live, work, and rejoice. And because all of us, we want to change the world. So why not start with these small steps?
Thank you so much, Biljana, Vladimira, Haris. Thank you for all your information and your time.
Thank you too also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our panelists were Biljana Georgievska, Director of the Council for Media Ethics of North Macedonia, Vladimira Dorchova, Editor of the Storyteller portal from Serbia, and Haris Bajic from the Peace Building Network of Bosnia and Herzegovina. Thanks to all of you for being with us.
For a closeout note, just thanks to all panelists, thanks to all contributors, thank you all participants for being today with us. In case you have any further questions that you didn't make to ask during the session, please feel free to reach out via our contact channels, and we will try to send you answers back. We will make sure to send you links to all the research publications we recently issued that are available on our websites. And we will be happy to support any of your inquiries or actions regarding improved media self-regulation in our countries. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.